Jesus concluded, "In your opinion, which one of these three acted like a neighbour toward the man attacked by the robbers?" The teacher of the law answered, "Well, the one who was kind to him." Jesus replied, "You go, then, and do the same."
It wouldn't be the gathering without some tech issues. Thank you for reading. So the parable of the Samaritan, it's one that we're all familiar with if you have any kind of relationship with the church or you've been to any church service. You've probably heard it before. It's so widely known that the word Samaritan itself has become sort of synonymous in the English language with being a good person who helps others. But one of the things I love about this story is that there are so many different lessons to pull out of it. Obviously, as we read, the story is in response to the question, who is my neighbour? So is this a story about helping people you don't like, or is this a story about being helped by people that you don't like? And why did the priest and the Levite leave him dying on the side of the road? I was always taught growing up that the priest and the Levite walked by because they thought he was a dead body and they can't touch a dead body and then also do their priestly duties. So this is really a story about not letting religious rules get in the way of doing what's right. But if everything you've ever learned about ancient Judaism comes from a Christian pulpit, you often end up with some misunderstandings that are rooted in kind of anti-Semitic ideas. Enshrined in Jewish law, both in ancient Judea and in modern-day Judaism, is the preservation of life. And so it would have been their priestly duty, above and beyond whatever they're doing in the temple, to save a man's life. So why didn't they stop to help? Maybe they were prejudiced against the man for his class, skin colour, ethnicity, or his cultural practices. It's sort of widely understood that the Samaritans and the Judeans and Nazarenes were kind of culturally at war with each other. They were groups that had a lot of tension. So maybe that's the answer. Or maybe they were afraid of being attacked themselves. The road from Jerusalem to Jericho was notorious for both its danger and its difficulty. It was a place where it was common to be attacked, but it was also like a difficult journey to physically take in the time before modern transport. Or maybe they were afraid about the hassle and the delay it would cause, and maybe they got somewhere to be. So I'd like to offer an explanation about this story, the Good Samaritan. And we're going to come forward from ancient Judea, but back in time from the present day, and it's 1973. And the place is Princeton University Theological Seminary. Social psychologists John Darley and David Batson are putting together an experiment to examine why people sometimes help others and then sometimes they don't. And they did this in arguably the funniest way possible, which is they tasked 67 seminary students with delivering a sermon on the Good Samaritan, and then they placed an actor on the way to the chapel, lying on the side of the road, groaning in pain, clearly in need of help. I'm sure you can imagine where this is going. So how many seminary students do you think stopped to help someone lying on the ground in distress while they were on their way to preach a sermon about helping someone lying on the ground in distress?
Less than 5.
Wow, you have a really cynical view of the human race. It was 24 of the 67 students, which is 36%. But they weren't doing this just for kicks or to point out Christian hypocrisy at its finest. They were doing science, which means they wrote it down. So half the students were told, "Oh, you're late. They were expecting you a few minutes ago. We better get moving." And the other students were told, "It'll be a few minutes before they're ready for you, but you might as well head on over." Unsurprisingly, the students who were told that they had plenty of time were 6 times times more likely to stop and help. So maybe the reason why the priest and the Levite didn't stop is simply because they were in a rush. Maybe that seems like too simple of an answer for you, but I find that quite intuitive, because I know that I miss things when I'm in a rush. I wonder sometimes how many cues that I haven't picked up on from my friends that they were going through a hard time because I'm so focused on myself and where I'm going to go and what I'm going to do. How many people who need my help that I just didn't notice. I know that if I see an unhoused person who's asking for money or some other kind of help, I'm much more likely to stop, even if to say, I'm really sorry, I don't have any money, but I hope you have a good evening. If I'm not late, when I'm in a rush, I'm kind of like, I'm just going to walk around. And I know that sometimes I'm just too in my head. I've just got too much going on, even if I'm not physically in a rush. There's just loads going on here, and my mind's going a million miles an hour, and I just don't see the people around me. And I don't know about you, but I've spent a lot of my life, I think, always rushing from one thing to the next. I don't often take time to, as the saying goes, smell the roses. There's just too much to do. There's so much to do in life and so little time, none of it guaranteed. I've got to get on with it. But it's really only in the last few years that I've really taken on board this idea that rest is not only a really important spiritual discipline, but also an act of resistance against a system that constantly tells us that our worth comes from how much we achieve. I don't pretend to be an expert, but I do know that when I take the time to cultivate rest as an intentional practice, I'm a more patient person, I have more grace, it's easier to be generous, and I really see and value the people around me rather than just kind of viewing them as background characters to my life. So I guess my question is, how can we cultivate rest to help us really notice the people around us who need help? How can we make sure that we're not in a rush all the time and ignoring, intentionally or otherwise, the people around us who need us to really see them? So, specifically, these are my questions. What do you think it means to be a neighbour to someone? Just kind of a similar question to what the man in the story was asking. In what circumstances are you likely to notice other people's needs and help them? What makes that difficult for you? What can we do to help us slow down and make time for those who need our help? And what difference would it make to how much you do and how much you rest if you really believed that we all have inherent worth, even if we're not productive or successful? So I'm going to give us 25 minutes probably to discuss these questions. I think with 3 groups again tonight. Do we agree? Yeah. There'd be about 10 people per group. So we're going to say goodbye, while we discuss that. We're going to say goodbye to all the people who've joined us online. Obviously, if you're in the WhatsApp, feel free to post your kind of thoughts and responses to these questions in the WhatsApp. And thank you so much for being here.